good day, everybody. This is Marcel Portute, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Inquirer Show. We're recording this on June 26th, 2019. Hope everyone is having a good day out there wherever you're listening to us, whether domestically here in the United States, specifically Atlanta, Georgia, or abroad. We have a very jam-packed show for you. We're going to discuss MLS soccer, particularly Atlanta United, as they prepare for their match tonight against Toronto. We'll touch on the Gold Cup and maybe some of the other competitions going on in the world of professional soccer. We'll also talk about Major League Baseball. We'll devote an entire section to MLB, and we're at the midway point of the year. If a lot of teams already played their 81st game, so we're already at that halfway mark of the campaign for 2019. So we will delve into some thoughts on each of the divisions. But as always, if you want to find out everything that we're doing, head to the sportsinquirer.net, premier site for news and notes in the world of sports. We're able to head to Atlanta United practice earlier this week, so we have very good content from manager Frank Boer and players Darlington Nagbe and Leandro Gonzalez Pirez. A very good breakdown of what's going on with the team as they conclude the international break and head back into action tonight. But we're going to play some clips from those interviews. But if you want to get the entire content from those pressers and interviews that we did, head to the site sportsinquirer.net and you'll get a full video of everything that we did. Also, Twitter and Instagram, subscribe to us under Sports Inquirer. That's all one word. It's a very good way to keep track of all of the tidbits that we have going on with our site. You go to Facebook under The Sports Inquirer or Sports Inquirer, one word. We have two different Facebook pages. We're still trying to resolve that and figure it out. Both of them provide the same content. So either one they subscribe to, we greatly appreciate it. So you go to either one of those, and that'll be a really good way to keep track of everything that we're doing. And finally, subscribe to us on YouTube and SoundCloud under Sports Inquirer. All right? I believe that one is The Sports Inquirer. Yes, those separate words, The Sports Inquirer. Make sure you head to those platforms, and on there you can get archives of our past shows and pressers from the past, what we're doing now and in the future. So make sure you get, and also besides Sports Inquirer Show, you have Verbal Submission, which is our combat sports podcast. We also have our podcast specifically devoted to basketball and Stagger Screen. We brought that back a few days ago. We're recapping the NBA draft. So if you want a full breakdown everything that happened last week with the draft and some free agency news, head to those platforms and search us out. And you can go there and find out everything that we did, or our thoughts and opinions on the draft. We're going to take our first break, and when we come back, we're going to discuss Atlanta United and their upcoming match tonight against Toronto and the United States men's national team as they're making their way through the Gold Cup here on the Sports Inquirer Show. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Sports Inquirer Show. Marcel Portute here with you. Wow, I really sped through. I got to say my name correctly. It's Marcel Portute. Thanks for listening to us today, as you said, on June 26, 2019. So let's talk about Atlanta United. They did have their international break, which the players will delve into a little bit, but they were active despite having that break from MLS action with the U.S. Open Cup. They were able to defeat the Charleston Battery a few weeks ago, and they followed that up with a 3-2 win at the Columbus Crew on June 18th in the fourth round of the U.S. Open Cup. And with that victory, they were able to advance to the quarterfinals of that competition for the first time in club history. Brandon Vazquez filling in for Joseph Martinez, who has his commitment with Venezuela international competition. Vazquez has been a fine revelation for Atlanta. He scored 2 goals for a brace in the contest, and Miles Robinson scored his first career goal with the first team in the victory. So that was a very solid win for Atlanta, and with that win, as I said, they are going to advance to the quarters for the first time in franchise history, and awaiting them will be the USL Championship squad, the St. Louis FC, and Atlanta will host them on July 12th, and St. Louis got there with a 1-0 victory, 1-0 win at FC Dallas on the same day, or next day, so I believe that was the 19th, for the round to reach the quarterfinals in their round 16 match. So despite Atlanta not playing an MLS contest since the first week of June, they've been very active with the U.S. Open Cup. And I think it's been very beneficial for a lot of the reserves, such as Vazquez, who's been struggling with injuries this entire year. He's back on the field. He has been in form. I think he scored at least one goal each of the past 3 matches he has played. That includes a goal in a contest for Atlanta United 2, and obviously 2 U.S. Open Cup matches this month. So he's on a very strong. He's in very strong form. We've also seen guys like Justin Miram get action. The acquisition from Orlando. He's acclimated himself into the lineup. Andrew Carlton, the midfielder as well, who's been kind of languishing with the United 2 squad. He's been able to get some first team action. And Romario Williams, he has been able to play with the first team. And Flo Pogba, the defender, French defender, who an off-season acquisition, who's been working his way into form and has also played now in several first team matches. So I'm very impressed, or a very positive mood for Atlanta as these players have been getting first team minutes. And I asked manager Frank de Boer specifically about the U.S. Open Cup and how beneficial it has been for the entire roster, top to bottom. Here are his thoughts. Hold 1 second. Here is where I pull that up right now. Give us a second. Here is manager Frank de Boer and his thoughts on. Let me pull up right here. Here we go. Yep, there we go. Here's manager Frank de Boer and his thoughts on the U.S. Open Cup and the players getting this extra time outside of MLS action.
90 minutes in the day, so that's crucial. And, for example, Flo asked, Florentin or Vargas that he can play with the USL a couple of days, 2 days ago. It means, you want to see that as a coach. He's motivated to when he can enter into the first team that he is ready. I'm very pleased, with especially with Flo, with the influence in the dressing room and everything. So and what I said, it's very important that those guys get also the feeling that they are involved in the first team, because they also want to see perspective, and they got to get a chance. And so it's good for the team and also of course for the person, the player himself.
And that was manager Frank de Boer talking about the U.S. Open Cup and the benefits of having the entire team involved with the competitions that the team is going through this year. And that is important for the roster because while MLS is the main commitment, I believe, with the team in defending their MLS Cup, you still have trophies to go for in various competitions. You had the CONCACAF Champions League that they played in the early part of the year. They got eliminated from that, but you're able to see guys get action there. And I said with the U.S. Open Cup, a nice seeing form. Because we look at the main players that play all the time, from both Martinez's Joseph and Pity to Ezekiel Barco, obviously Captain Michael Parkhurst, Brad Guzan, all those guys getting action. And as far as the main players, even Gonzalez, Pirez, and we'll go down the list of the mainstays. But you have an entire roster of bench players who feel that they should get first team minutes as well. And Atlanta has the depth that those guys do not get to play as often as they would like. Alex Khan as well, the backup goalkeeper for Atlanta, who I think could start on several MLS squads. But obviously you have the veteran Guzan there, the recently named All-Star. Alex Khan's not going to get much time as far as playing MLS matches, but he was able to get one contest in with the U.S. Open Cup. So the competition has been very beneficial for Atlanta, for these players who are either young, like a Vazquez or a Carlton, or guys who are veterans but are working their way and adjusting to the Atlanta system, like Pogba and Miram. So it's been very positive as far as what we've seen from Atlanta. But they do return to action tonight on June 26th in MLS competition against Toronto. And as I said, Atlanta's been off for nearly a month. Their last matchup, I believe, in MLS competition was on June 2nd. So it's been almost a month since they have played in an MLS competition. So let's hear from Leandro Gonzalez Pirez on the break that they got from MLS competition and how they have used it.
Good break for us, most in mind, and the brain, physical. Now we have a good way because we will be 1 day free in 28 in the next 28 days, so that'll be hard, but we are ready to come back to play and try to win and keep the first position.
You kind of prepare yourself for that tough stretch, like you said, these 28 days coming up, you kind of spend the time mentally getting ready.
Yeah, we try to enjoy these days,
yeah.
Because after I said to my wife, okay, I'm going to be here, so I need rest and play. And this is why I prepared my mind. But it will be good if we start good. Maybe it could be crucial for us.
And that was Leandro Gonzalez Pirez talking about the break, and more importantly, just as important was the mental aspect or mental rest that he got, as well as the physical. So that was very beneficial. He also breaks down his family dinner, or his team dinners or meals at his home, and his recipes and what he likes to cook. So that's why it's very good to go to these practices and pressers to hear from the players. We talk about X's and O's, of course, and how they compete and what the upcoming matchup's going to be like. But we also talk about off-the-field stuff. So there's a really good breakdown of what he does, and he's Argentinian, and how that role plays into hosting meals at his house for the team. So make sure you go to our site, sportsinquirer.net, and check out the ways that he is incorporating food into the team bonding. So I highly recommend that. Now, the matchup tonight, going back to Toronto, there'll be no Tito Villalba. He is working his way through injury. He should be back, as manager Frank de Boer mentioned, probably within the next week or two. So he should be back, but he is not going to be able to make it for tonight's matchup. No Joseph Martinez. He is committed to Venezuela as they are playing in the South American competition for his national team. And no Ezequiel Barco. He picked up he picked up an injury in the Columbus matchup, so he is not going to be available. So those are three premier offensive forces for Atlanta. How do you replace that? How do you place Joseph specifically at the forward position? It's been a battle between Brandon Vazquez and Romario Williams. Both guys have scored goals as in the starting lineup, or have scored goals in that top role during the U.S. Open Cup. But here is manager Frank de Boer specifically talking about the contributions of Brandon Vazquez and the differences and tendencies of Vazquez compared to Joseph Martinez.
Who wants it the most, but also what you see in training. And, you see that he has his momentum right now. He scored in 3 games. He scored 5 goals on the USL to forward. With the first team, so as a coach, you want to use that momentum, of course.
You see him as a striker. I mean, obviously he's been playing in there, but in the past and under the former coach, he's played as the winger. I don't know if you guys have talked about that.
Everybody sees that he's a striker. He's strong. He can hold the ball. He can be a rest point. When you kick the ball long. Did a great job against Columbus, so of course, because his work rate is fantastic. So when you think, okay, we have to play with, if you want to play 4-3-3, but we play a little bit more with 2 strikers because he's more inside, and you're getting a lot more crosses from the right, and he's playing as a left winger, and he gets inside the box, for headers, that's also a possibility. And normally, if you want to use him as a winger, you do it like that. No, he's not a typical winger. He's more already, behind the other striker.
Right.
Also make runs behind. When he's really okay. Joseph, his first meters are incredible. For a tall guy, you cannot have that, or you have to be a Usain Bolt or something like that. But he's more the protector guy. Lay it off, come in the box again, and try to finish from there. Joseph is always on the move, if he wants to receive the ball, and that's a great quality. And he's always looking for that moment, and you recognize that so well. Every time you see, okay, somebody's opened his face to him, and he's already on his way. And that's a great quality of Joseph. He sometimes does it all, but it's what I said, it's a specialty of Joseph.
All right, and that was manager Frank DeBoer discussing Brandon Vazquez and his qualities as a forward and similarities and a little bit differences between him and Joseph Martinez. Obviously, Joseph Martinez is one of the premier strikers in MLS and in the world. Brandon Vazquez is working his way towards that. But as you see, both guys are taking advantage of their opportunities when they are in the first team lineup for Atlanta United. And Atlanta now faces Toronto. Interesting matchup. You look at the Toronto's been a premier team for MLS over the past few years, and Atlanta actually had a chance to win the Supporters' Shield last year in the regular season finale, but they lost at Toronto, and that cost them that. Now, Atlanta was able to rebound and get the MLS Cup in the playoffs, but still, that's an award or a trophy that they really wanted and were not able to get. Atlanta is 1-1-3 all time versus Toronto, and so that means Toronto's kind of had their number. But Atlanta was able to win the first matchup of the season, 2-0. It was in Atlanta on May 8th in 2019. Tito Villalba and Julian Gressel were able to score goals in that contest. Toronto is really affected by the Gold Cup. They have two Americans, Josie Altidore and Michael Bradley, who, if you follow American soccer, you're very familiar with. They are with the United States in the Gold Cup. Also, three Canadians in Morgan, Okello, and Osorio are with Team Canada. So those five players are not going to be available tonight for Toronto as they face Atlanta. And furthermore, Toronto is coming off of a 3-0 road loss to FC Dallas on Saturday, June 22nd. So not only is the roster depleted, but they are coming off of one of their worst performances of the year. Despite all of that, manager Frank DeBoer for Atlanta is not buying the hype that Toronto is an underdog tonight.
No, I just spoke with the team also about they are like a wounded animal, and wounded animals are really dangerous, So they're playing at home. We are one of the rivals, of course, the last couple of years, and they want to have revenge for those bad results. And still, if you see the squad they can put up, it's a very decent squad. Of course, it's less than with Bradley, Striker, Osorio. So that's normal. But still, they have a very decent squad with Consuelo, of course, the main star, of course. But we have to be really prepared because one time they will, get a victory, but we have to make sure that it's not against us.
All right, now is manager Frank DeBoer discussing Toronto and mentioned some of the missing players, but he said as they're a wounded animal, so that means they're they're desperate. And if you look at the MLS standings, which I just pulled up right now, just give me a moment. So Philadelphia has 31 points, and they lead the Eastern Conference, and Atlanta has 26. Now, Atlanta does have 2 games at hand, which means that Philadelphia's played 17, Atlanta's only played 15 matches, so Atlanta does have 2 matches that they still need to make up against Philadelphia as far as that goes. But then Toronto has 19 points. They're right out. They're in the playoff picture right now, but they are tied with Chicago and 1 point ahead of Orlando City for that final playoff spot. So despite the players missing on the roster, they are very desperate to get a win and move up the standings. So is Atlanta as well. They want to keep themselves in contention for the Eastern Conference regular season championship. Now the Supporters' Shield might be a little tough because LAFC has played 16 matches and has 37 points, and they've lost only 1 match at MLS play this year. So LAFC might have that on wrap. If they just play average football the rest of the season, they probably will get that. But Atlanta still wants to move up the standings and make their presence felt in that regard. And as I said, Atlanta's looking for their first win in Toronto in history, and Toronto is 3-3-3 at home in 2019. So that's where Toronto's home form is not the best, and Atlanta's just looking at their first true win at Toronto for the first time in their history. And let me just get one correction: this will be Atlanta's first MLS game since a 2-0 win over the Chicago Fire on June 1st. I think I said June 2nd earlier on the show, but it's June 1st. So that's the last time that they have played in competition in Major League Soccer. And this contest tonight, begins a stretch where they will play 8 games in the next 26 days, including that U.S. Open Cup quarterfinal at home against Toronto and against St. Louis, in July. So they're going to be very active over the next few weeks. Remember, they play today, as I said, on June 26th, but they're going to be right back here at home in Atlanta on June 29th when they will host Montreal. So very active time for Atlanta as they are working their way through the MLS season. And speaking of the Gold Cup itself, the United States men's national team they're undefeated so far in play. They were able to defeat Guyana 4-0 on June 18th. Boyd had 2 goals. Areola and Zardes also had scores. So under Greg, new manager Greg Burkhalter for the U.S. men's national team, solid form. Now the competition, they played Guyana and so they've played inferior competition so far, but that's what you need to do. You can say the same thing about Canada and Mexico, and Costa Rica to a lesser regard. But you play Canada and Mexico played each other, so that's a legitimate matchup. But you gotta play who you're gonna play, and they do take a little bit of a step up tonight against Panama in a final group stage match. So we'll see what happens there. But the good part about the United States team so far, you're seeing the incorporation of Pulisic and Zardes, guys who should be Ingboy, playing forward, playing up front. That's always been a big issue for the U.S. men's national team. The scoring, the back line as well. I think Tim Howard covered up for a lot of mistakes on the back line with very athletic saves over the years. But defensively, I think they've looked okay. Midfield and forwards, I think, have been solid. I said Boyd scoring. Zardes has gotten some action. You probably might see Josie Altidore maybe play a little bit more of a forward spot in that regard. So Zardes and Josie might be interchangeable in that regard. But I said you have Areola scoring. You have Pulisic. He scored as well. He has scored as well in the Gold Cup. So that's where you're seeing a lot of the forwards and the attacking midfielders getting involved in the action. So that's very good. If the United States wins tonight, they'll face Curacao in the quarterfinals on Sunday, June 30th in Philadelphia. If they lose, they'll face Jamaica that same day in the quarterfinals as well, also in Philly. So they've already guaranteed a spot into the next round. So tonight is really about getting that win. And Curaçao's been a surprise. They played very well to advance to this stage. But you got to figure that Jamaica is the stronger team. So you want to avoid that one as much as you can. Now, if they face Jamaica, Jamaica's very competitive. And United States is better than Jamaica. But still, you want to continue winning as well and keep the positive momentum going. So we'll see what happens in that competition. And also, the United States women's team is in their World Cup. And they're going to face France later on this week. France is a co-favorite, or one of the favorites, I believe, to win the entire competition. It's in France, so they got the home field advantage. United States is one of the top 2-3 teams in the world themselves, so that should be for a matchup, I believe, in their quarterfinal match. That's a potential final. Hey, that's soccer though. That's the way the brackets and the odds line up for you. So United States is already going to face one of their tougher teams in the competition in an earlier stage than expected. They were able to win their previous match 2-1 over Spain. 2 penalties were granted to them. They were able to convert them, including one by Megan Rapinoe. So they are finding their way through the competition as well. So those are our thoughts on Major League Soccer and the United States national teams in their respective competitions in our portion of the show. When we come back, we're going to bring back Beanball and discuss Major League Baseball here on the Sports Inquirer Show. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Sports Inquirer Show. Marcel Portute with you. Yeah, let's bring up Beanball. We haven't talked Major League Baseball yet this season, and we're at the halfway mark, which is way too long on my part to not discuss one of the major sports in the United States. So let's get into it. I think the best way to approach it is that I'm going to look at each of the division standings, give my thoughts on what's going on there. And then when we do Beanball for another edition within the next few days, we'll break down our selections for postseason awards. Look at, MVP, Rookie of the Year, Manager of the Year, stuff like that. And also some trade speculation. We'll touch on some trade speculation as well when we go down to divisions, but I'll delve deeper into that on our next show. We'll start with the AL East, and the Yankees are the best team in the AL East. And let's see, are they the best team in baseball? Technically, they are the best team in the AL with 51 wins. Yeah, interesting year for the Yankees. Obviously, coming off the past few years, getting eliminated by Boston in 2018 and then the Astros, I believe, in 2017, where they've been so close to reaching the World Series. You'd figure this may be the year where, and then Boston winning the World Series in 2018, and Houston as well. So they've lost the last two World Series champions in the postseason. For Yankee standards, that's pretty disappointing. You would think that this year would have been their bounce back year, but they dealt with so many injuries to their roster. They've dealt with Didi Gregorius, Giancarlo Stanton, Aaron Judge, have all dealt with injuries. And I would argue maybe the three best players on the team. So all those guys have missed extended amounts of time, but they have rebounded. And as I said, they've had, despite those errors, having the best record in the American League. Credit to Aaron Boone. I know he gets criticized for being maybe not the most aggressive manager, or having Brian Cashman, the general manager, make the lineup card for him, and not being a manager that goes on instinct and is very analytical. But you have to give him credit. LeMahieu, Torres, Frazier, Urshela, all of these guys have been incorporated into the lineup and have produced at, some of them at all-star level. LeMahieu, that free agent acquisition, has been a major surprise for the Yankees. And they have homered right now in an MLB record 28 consecutive games. So they're mashing their way through the season. They're won 9 of their last 10. They've played very well. Judge is working his way back into the lineup. He's been playing the past few games. You got to figure that he's going to get going. Giancarlo Stanton dealing with a knee injury. I guess he did an MRI on it. So as we were recording this, I don't know what the verdict is, but we don't know if he's going to come. He should come back this year, but it may be a little bit longer than expected. But with the acquisitions of Edwin Encarnacion as well, you have to figure that's going to be another bat for them in there. And I guess they picked him up because maybe they knew about Stanton's injury being worse than anticipated. But when you have a starting outfield of Judge, possibly Encarnacion, and Gardner, and your DH be rotating between those guys, you're doing a very good job. So they'll be fine. The pitching, though, I think has been an issue, will be a potential issue. Tanaka is a very good pitcher. You got to figure that's going to be your game one guy. But beyond that, where do they go? Sabathia has been productive for them. But if he has to start in the playoffs, that's not a good sign. That's where we're seeing the Stroman rumors with Toronto, Madison Bumgarner with the San Francisco Giants. All those guys are potential targets for the Yankees. That's definitely expected. And the thing about the Yankees also is you just got to get 5 innings. That bullpen is very good, especially when you have Chapman closing at the end. If your starter, and especially when you get to the postseason where you have more time off between games, if you can find a way to get through 6 innings and give the ball to that bullpen, that's going to be very tough to beat for any team in the American League. Tampa has been a very nice story, got off to a very good start, but now you're starting to see them hit reality. They're now 6 games out of first place. They're 3-7 in their last 10 contests. Only 20-18 at home. And I bring that fact up because we've gotten reports now that the ownership of Tampa has been looking to potentially split their home games in the future between Tampa and Montreal. I think when you get to that stage of your home base struggling to draw fans like you do in Tampa and struggling to gain support, it's time to move. And I know we don't like any professional team moving. Excuse me, because it is a bad sign for the overall state of your league that a team cannot survive in a market. I don't care what the market is. If it's a small market, a big market, you don't want a team moving because it doesn't look good. But I think in this scenario, they've tried Tampa for so long to make it successful there. They had a good run under Joe Madden, even made a World Series appearance back about 7-8 years ago. But it's time to move on from that team. It just doesn't work in Tampa. And I'm not blaming the fans necessarily. It's an odd setup there as far as where the stadium is located and the logistics of it. Also, they win quite a bit. You can't say that the product itself is bad. They have a very respectable product. But just the way that things are operated down in Tampa, it's just not working out. And to expect to have half your season in Tampa, at least your home contest, and then the other half in Montreal, all the way across the country, in another country, in fact, is a little ridiculous. I think this is the way they are dipping their toes into the moving prospect or potential of going there. Montreal is a very strong base for baseball. I think it's different than the early '90s. I think that the structure, the situation in Montreal does lead to having a team there now in 2020 or 2021 or the next few years. So all that being said, just move to Montreal. I think having a second Canadian team is good. You played there before with the Expos a long time ago, so it's not like it's completely foreign territory, even though it's in a foreign land. You have your natural rivalry with Toronto. You don't even have to move around the league and have to have a situation where the Astros had to go from the National League to the American League to balance things out. You can just keep them in the AL East, and it all works out for all parties involved. Now, there are Tampa fans out there that are disappointed that the team may move, but that's the reality of pro sports. It can happen. But despite all that, they're finding their way. They'll be in the wild card picture the entire year, and that's where Boston as well. They are 44 wins, so they're one game behind Tampa in that regard. You got to figure the AL wild card picture is going to come down to many teams. It'll be more competitive, I think, than the NL when we get to that. But Boston at 44 wins, despite having the hangover of winning the World Series last year and dealing with injuries of their own, and some guys who had slow starts to the year, particularly Chris Sale, Mookie Betts, some of their top players, they are rounding in a form as well. You have to figure that those guys put up big numbers throughout their career. They're going to reach those numbers by the end of the season. And that's where you got to figure Boston and Tampa are going to find their way into the AL wildcard competition. And to Cleveland solid too. And the Rangers have been surprising, as well as Oakland. And they are kind of on the outside looking in of the wild card. I'll give the Angels a little bit of a shot as well. They're only about 4 or 5 games out. But in the end, I think Tampa and Boston are going to find their ways into that wild card matchup, especially when they get to face Toronto and Baltimore, 2 teams who are going to contend for the worst record in the entire MLB, especially Baltimore. Baltimore is already 22-57. We're not even at the halfway mark, and they have 57 losses. I mean, that is historically bad. They're on pace to break, I don't say break, I guess in a good way, but in a bad way, some all-time loss records for the league and for that franchise. So you got to figure Tampa and Boston are going to be able to beat up on them. And the Yankees as well. They're going to beat each other up, but still, I think those 3 teams have put themselves on a higher category than the others in that division. The AL Central, Minnesota has probably been a surprise maybe of all of baseball. They're at 51-27. They already have an 8.5 game lead over the Indians in the standings. Credit to that team as well. They're doing it with balance. They already have 8 guys with double-digit home runs. And Polanco, Cruz, Kepler, Rosario, they all can mash the ball. They have Buxton as well. I think he may be close to 10 by now as we're recording the show. They're finding a way to get wins, and they've been tremendous performers under Molitor. And not under Molitor. Actually, Molitor is out. Rocco Baladelli. They made a managing change for Minnesota. So Rocco's in there, and they're doing a very good job for him in first place. I figure they're going to win that division and may contend for the best record in the AL, because there are some really bad teams as well in Chicago, Detroit, and Kansas City. They're going to be nowhere close to the 500 mark this year. So when you get beat up on those teams, that means you could get a lead, and they might get home field throughout the AL playoffs, which is very important. And then moving on to the AL West, the Astros have a 6.5 game lead over the Rangers and the Oakland A's. Houston's one of those teams, if everyone is healthy, and they've dealt with their injury issues as well. Bregman's been a big carrier for them, putting himself in the MVP conversation, but they have dealt with a lot of guys, like including Altuve, Correa, and Springer, guys who have tried to work their way back into the lineup, and they've done a very good job with that. They're just loaded squad when everyone is healthy. Their starting rotation, we have Garrett Cole and Justin Verlander, two Cy Young candidates. They might be in the top 5 in the Cy Young competition by the end of the year. That's a great start. The lineup, as I said, with Altuve, Carrera, Bregman, Springer, they're loaded. They have championship experience. They're going to mash on that division. As I said, Texas and Oakland, and even Anaheim, I'll throw them in there as well. I mean, when you have Mike Trout maybe putting together his best statistical season, which is, I mean, he's an all-timer already. When you look at his contributions, all-around play, he's the best player in the game, and he may have his best season in his career at age 27 or in his 27, 28 year. I mean, special performance. But all of that being said, Anaheim is 40-40, and that's just typical of what they've been in the Trout era. They have Ohtani's been a strong form for them at DH. They have Upton coming back, so the lineup they can mash, but the pitching is below average, and that's where Anaheim is going to be in trouble as far as that goes. So the AL, as I said, the division winners I think are pretty set in the Yankees, Twins, and Astros, and the wild card could be intriguing with some of the AL West teams and the Cleveland finding their way in there, but ultimately I think it's going to be the Rays and the Red Sox finding their way into that wild card spot when the playoffs start. Nationally, let's move on to there. We'll start with the East as well, like we do with the AL. Atlanta's looking like the class of the division. And when you have let's see, right now technically they are 5.5 games up on Philadelphia. And Philadelphia 3-7 over their past 10. I think they recently snapped a 7-game losing streak. So they have not been in form. Let's get to the Braves at first. Let's break them down. The best lineup, maybe in the entire National League. You have all-stars and MVP candidates in at least 2 spots, I think. Freddie Freeman and Ronald Acuna. Guys who are on pace for 30-plus home runs, 100-plus RBIs, and Acuna is your leadoff hitter, producing those type of numbers. He has been more selective at the plate. His average has been around the 270s, 280s, which is very good for him, and that's been a marked improvement for him. You have Rookie of the Year, and Freeman as well. He gets overlooked, but very consistent. Power numbers, he's probably going to end up around 30-plus home runs, which would be the most in his career. So he's putting himself in the MVP position as well. And the rest of the lineup, you have Austin Riley, the rookie player. Please, should be a third baseman. He's playing left field, giving you massive pop. He could get to 30-plus home runs already, and he's not Pete Alonso. We'll get to Alonso in a moment with the Mets, but he gives you a lot of power. Marquez, consistent hitter. Josh Donaldson, their free agent acquisition from Toronto for the Braves. He gives you solid third base defense. He's working his way into form as well. He's mashing at a pretty solid level. So we'll see what happens there. The middle infield, the 2 young guys, Dansby Swanson at shortstop and Ozzie Albies at second. Defensively, I think they've been very good. Swanson hitting in the second spot. We've seen him hit as low as 7 or 8 in the lineup in the past and really struggle at the plate. This year, he's putting together a solid year. Especially in that 2 spot, he's able to move the lineup there. Ozzie Albies doing very, very good player as well. And even the catchers, the Flowers and Brian McCann combination, they rotate in there. They've done very well. And finally, the starting rotation. When you have Soroka and Fried, the 2 young guys, the under 25-year-olds, who are pitching, I think, at all-star levels at points this year. That's been very good. Julio Teheran, who we live here in Atlanta, we're based here. Seems like every other week someone wants to trade Teheran for somebody, but he eats up innings. He gives you some consistency. He'll give you 6 innings every game. Now, is he going to give you shutout innings and limit the offensive lineup? Probably not. But he gives you good consistency as far as you know what you're getting from him, and he's a solid rotation guy. Dallas Keuchel, the big acquisition from the Astros. I guess he was a free agent, so that he wasn't technically an acquisition from the Astros, but that's where he played previously. You have Keuchel in there now in the rotation. That's going to be very good. He's an innings eater as well. You got to figure when he grounds into form, and I think by mid to late July, you'll see the best of Keuchel, and that's very good for the Braves as well. The bullpen, a little bit lacking. I know Sean Newcomb's been in there. He's been a starter in the past, but he's now in the bullpen. He gives you a good presence there. They got to find a closer. Jackson is not the answer. He's blown many saves for the Braves this year. But I think when you have Tuki Toussaint and Newcomb, some of those guys who were stars before, they're used to pitching multiple innings. I think that'll be very beneficial in the postseason when you might have to go with long relievers more often because of the way things work out. So I think the Braves are okay pitching-wise. They're another team in the Madison Bumgarner sweepstakes. Obviously, you get him. I think that takes them to another level. You have some trade bait as well with some other guys who have been on the bench for the Braves this year. So they have trade options in that regard. And I thought the division would be one of the most competitive in all of baseball, but it looks like that's not going to be the case. Philadelphia is a mess right now. As I said, they had a long losing streak, barely 500. They are in trouble. The Bryce Harper acquisition, while he brings a lot of pop, and he brings excitement to the team, and their attendance numbers have been pretty strong, and the ratings on television. And he's a solid player. I don't want to say he's a scrub or is barely a major leaguer, but if you expect him to go in there and carry the franchise and take to the next level, that's not the player that he is. And you look at the team and the names, they have Harper, they have Aaron Nola, All-Stars, teams MVP and Harper. Nola's been a Cy Young candidate, and they have other players that they'd be much better, but they're not. And I just don't think they're going to turn it around this year. Same thing with the Nationals. You look at that team, you have Scherzer and Strasburg, your top two starters. That's a very good start. You have Turner, you have Soto, Roberts. They have on the field very good players there as well, but it just has not worked out for the Nationals. Mets, same deal. Starting rotation, when you start with DeGrom and Syndergaard, and even Wheeler, you throw them in Mats, that's very, very tough to beat. But they have struggled tremendously. And I'll touch on that Mets situation with Mickey Callaway, Jason Vargas, and Newsday reporter, let me get his name right. Where is it at? Where'd it go? Yeah, Tim Healey. The incident on June 22nd. And for those of you that were not aware of it, Mickey Callaway, the manager of the Mets, was in a verbal altercation with Newsday reporter Tim Healey. And Callaway made verbal threats towards Healey, and Jason Vargas, a player for the Mets, he entered the fray and also threatened some harm to Healey in that situation. It's just the way that it's handled, and the Mets are very sensitive right now in a very tenuous spot. They have Van Wagenen, the new general manager, first year with the team. He overhauled the squad, and his ties to being an agent have been very ubiquitous in the hirings from the team and who they just fired their pitching coach, and now they have an 82-year-old man in the spot as their pitching coach. Just a lot going on with the Mets drama, typical stuff. Look, altercation, I don't say altercation, that's a little strong. Verbal disagreements between players and the media, and managers and media, happens quite a bit. But there's usually a level of professionalism on both sides of those arguments. I've talked to players and coaches, and they may disagree with the question that I ask, or something I've said, and they may choose not to answer it, or go on to the next question. But there's a way to handle that as well. Or the really good ones will find a way to answer the question without really answering the question. But as a journalist or as someone who covers a team, there are questions that need to be asked. And the Mets have a lot of those questions, and you can't be sensitive to the fact that they are being asked. And to go after a reporter is not the answer. I was not there personally, so I can't say exactly what happened there. But when you get immediate apologies from the player, and at least from the manager, and the team finds the player and the manager, they know that they're in the wrong when that happens. So the Mets are just a mess right now. And Callaway, from the time he's been with the team, has been a very tenuous position for him being the manager, and it seems like he's heading towards the end of his run with the Mets. But as far as on the field situations go, Braves are running away with this division, and they're now in a position where they might be able to beat up on the Nationals, Mets, and then the Marlins, who I thought would contend with all-time worst record in MLB history, but they've actually turned it around, relatively speaking. Now, they're still 17 games under 500, but they're not a very good team. So we'll see what happens there. A competitive division, kind of what I thought the NL East would be, has been the NL Central, with the Cubs, Brewers, and Cardinals all separated by less than 3 games. And it may be a similar scenario where 2 of the wild card teams from the NL Central find their way into the postseason. I can see that situation happening. We'll start with very, very interesting. The Cubs have the experience, especially with Craig Kimbrell. It's kind of similar to Dallas Keuchel scenario, signing in the middle of the regular season. He's working his way back into form, and he'll be with the team, I believe, if not this weekend, by early next week. He should be in the main roster for the Cubs. So that gives you another reliever to help out the cause. So that's very good for Chicago, who, despite people kind of I think they overlook the Cubs, which is hard to believe because the Cubs have a big fan base, big national presence in a major city. But I think they've been overlooked this year as far as the major leagues. And to be fair, you have the Yankees playing really well, and the Dodgers are on a record-setting pace themselves. But the Cubs, I think, are a very solid team. And the Brewers, when Christian Yelich, probably the MVP, or him and Bellinger from the Dodgers, 1-2 in the MVP battle. When you have Yelich playing as well as he is, that gives them a lot of attention as well. And then Milwaukee also has probably the best bullpen in Major League Baseball with Hader and the rest of that squad. We've seen them perform at a high level over the past few years, and those guys are playing at that same level right now. The Cardinals are an interesting team. They're kind of, numbers-wise, I said they're right outside looking in right now of the postseason, but they're only 2.5 games out of first place, so you can't say that they're completely out. But I think the Cardinals will be the team that fades towards the middle or end of the regular season. And then the West, Dodgers, 55 wins already at this point of the year, 55-26. As a Bellinger is probably your MVP right now. If it wasn't for Yelich, I think he'd have a legitimate chance to get the Triple Crown. I think Yelich is going to nip him in one of the categories, whether it's RBIs or home runs. But he's going to finish probably top 3 or 4 in batting average as well. That's a special campaign for him. Best rotation, I think, in the NL, when you can have Rue, Hill, Buehler, and the great Clayton Kershaw as your top 4. That's a very good regular season rotation. The things that can haunt the Dodgers and mess them up is the bullpen, especially Jansen as the closer. And rotation-wise, I think they'll be okay with Rue, Buehler, and Kershaw. If that's your starting 3 in a playoff series, that's very good. But despite all of that, your bullpen can mess it up for you. And that's where Jansen, I think, and the way the Dodgers use their bullpen, we've seen questionable usage of them in the past under manager Dave Roberts. That can hurt them in the postseason. But as far as the regular season goes, they're going to roll to 100 wins. And I don't know if they're going to reach that 116 wins. I want to say the Mariners reached in 2001. I'm really freebasing, or not freebasing, that's a bad term. I'm freestyling on my statistics here as far as the most wins in the regular season ever for a franchise. But I think the Dodgers will be right there in contention for that. I don't know if they'll reach it because I think the rest of the competition in the West is respectable. I think the Rockies are a good team. They're in the wild card hunt. The Diamondbacks are okay. Even the Padres, those teams are all hovering around 500. So they're not going to be they're not going to just lay down and lose a bunch of games to the Dodgers. But 100 wins is guaranteed, and they're going to have a really good run as far as that goes. All right, and that was our Beanball section of the show, and we're going to take one final break. And when we come back, we'll talk some NBA and some other things in the world of sports in the miscellaneous section here on the Sports Inquirer Show. All right, final segment of the show. We're going to wrap it up real quick here. Yeah, not much to really talk about the NBA as far as the free agency goes. the draft, as I said, we did our full show a few days ago about the draft. Make sure you check that out. But just synopsis of that, no really big surprises there. We knew Zion would go number 1 and John Morant 2 to Memphis. 3 ended up being RJ Barrett with the Knicks. Hawks, I thought, had a solid draft, taking the DeAndre Hunter at number 4 and getting Cam Reddish at number 10. So I thought they did a good job. But outside of that, weren't really big surprises as far as that goes. The NBA awards, I did not watch a minute of it. I'm really bad with award shows. To see a group of people, and this goes for Oscars, Grammys, BET Awards. It goes down the list of all of NFL awards. So it's not a sports thing. It's Tony Awards, you name them all. I try to watch them all in the past. It's just very hard sitting there watching people just congratulate each other and honor. Now, I like to see who wins, and that's intriguing. But to actually watch the ceremony, don't have really much to say about that. I know who won. Giannis got the MVP. Probably we expected that. Luka Doncic got the Rookie of the Year. Mike Budenholzer, Coach of the Year. So all those weren't surprising. Giannis' speech was very great. He had a very interesting story. To go from a minority in Greece and find his way to an MVP of the NBA all before his 26th birthday. Tremendous stuff there. Third youngest MVP ever behind Derrick Rose and LeBron James. His story is very good, and it gets overlooked. It's getting more promotion now, but the fact that he's found his way to this level as a professional for a guy who was I only believe he was a lottery. I think he was outside a lottery when he was drafted to one spot ahead of the Hawks in Atlanta. Still talks about that, how they wanted to get Giannis, but it didn't work out for him. But the way that he found a way to go from a mid first round pick, who was looked at as just a big athlete who couldn't really do anything well, to becoming maybe the best defender in the league and the best paint player in the NBA, I think without a doubt, and lead his team to a 60-win campaign. Tremendous effort for him, and he was very emotional receiving the award. I did see some of that speech, so that was very good in that regard. And as far as the free agency, we're now seeing stuff. Jimmy Butler may do a sign and trade with the Sixers and the Rockets. I don't see that happening. Just the numbers don't work out in that regard. Houston, this is the bed that they've made. They have to stay with it. Harden and Paul are that's going to be their main players. And Capella. Those are your 3 guys. All the other players are interchangeable. But to try to find a way to make that trade happen involves a lot of numbers that are not going to work out ultimately for the Rockets, I believe. And I don't think personality-wise, having Jimmy Butler in that locker room with Chris Paul and James Harden, the passive-aggressive kings, and Jimmy Butler, the aggressive king, not in lack of passivity, so the aggressive passive guy, it just will not work out for the team on or off the court, I believe. But the way the Rockets operate, they have their own analytical system. Daryl Morey likes to tell you about all of their numbers and how they are ahead of the NBA. I think what it shows more as well, and we'll end on this, is open season right now in the NBA. Golden State, whether it's Durant's injury and free agency, Klay Thompson's injury and free agency, those 2 players, hypothetically, may not be with the team for this upcoming season. I think Durant may be gone completely from the squad, and then Thompson may resign, but he's coming off the ACL injury. We're not going to see him play, maybe not the entire year. So guys figure this is our chance to win a championship. That's why the Lakers were very aggressive with their trade for Anthony Davis. That's why you're seeing the Clippers. They're going to be aggressive. And in the East, you're seeing, and that's in Houston as well with this Jimmy Butler scenario. Teams are figuring this may be our 1 year to get a championship before the Warriors regroup and retool, especially if they re-sign Durant and Thompson. So that's where you're seeing a very aggressive moves in that regard. But we'll see what happens there. By the time we do some more stagger screen and within our show, when I break it down further, maybe we'll have some acquisitions. But technically, free agency does not start until June 30th, and then June 5th is the start of the new calendar year. So we're going to be waiting around for about next few days, close to a week from when we're recording this show on June 26th, before we have any tangible news to really report. So when that happens, we'll break it down for you as always. And that's concluded our show today. Thanks for listening to Sports Inquirer Show. As always, head to sportsinquirer.net, premier site for news and notes in the world of sports. Head over to our various platforms. Let's pull it up right now so we make sure we do not forget any of them. Twitter and Instagram, Sports Inquirer, all one word. Make sure you go there. Facebook, The Sports Inquirer. Those are separate words. Or you go to Sports Inquirer as well, one word, on our 2 Facebook pages, which we're trying to resolve as we speak. Subscribe to YouTube and SoundCloud for The Sports Inquirer. And the great way with that, great thing about it, it's a great way to get all of our archived shows, whether it's the Inquirer Show, Verbal Submission, Stagger Screen, Beanball. We might do a specific baseball podcast as well. So to get all of those up-to-date items, make sure you check out the site or make sure you go to YouTube and SoundCloud, subscribe to us, and they'll be all out there laid out for you. Until next time, have a good day.